Our artists today worked during the 1960s. 1960s. This is a really important time to understand what actually happened before and what is happening now during the 1960s. But first, this artist wanted to become famous. That was his main goal. He grew up idolizing celebrities, really wanted to be famous. And we're not sure if he actually wanted to be an artist that was famous or if he just wanted to be a famous celebrity. So we'll see that here as we go on. Now, he went to college. He actually trained as a graphic designer as well as an artist. And so when he was done with college, he actually got a job working for a newspaper, designing ads for the newspaper. So he would work with any type of advertiser, design their ad, create the drawings for their ad, and he became very well known for that. But he wasn't famous. He was just working for a newspaper. So he thought to himself, what can I do to be famous? Well, right before this is the 1950s, if you guys can remember. It's abstract expressionism. All these abstract things are going on. And he realized, I have to do something completely different to actually break through and become famous. So he's thinking to himself, what do I do? Maybe I do comics. No, wait, Roy Lichtenstein already did comics. So he tried painting a bunch of things, and things just weren't working out. Finally, his roommate one day was saying, hey, why don't you just paint something that's everyday and something that's common, like a soup can? So Andy Warhol went down to the grocery store, bought a soup can, and decided to paint it. And the rest is kind of history after that. But, as you can see here, most people think, oh, it's just a soup can. Yes, he did hand paint this, but it's just a soup can. Well, what he's trying to do here, two things. He is trying to say, hey, soup can. Someone had to design this. Someone had to pick out the font for the Campbells. The font for condensed, font for tomato, font for soup. They had to lay it out. They had to decide the red on top, white on the bottom. They had to design the little label. This is a design. Maybe we should start looking at everyday art as a design. As well as he wanted art to reflect what's going on in society. At this time period, in society, mass production is happening. Factories are cranking out all these different items. They're not handmade anymore. And so things are just being pumped out. And so he actually wanted his art to represent this mass production. We actually see where he painted all 32 versions of the Campbell soup can. He actually did all of these hand painted, and I've actually seen this. They're about this size, all painted like this and all laid out. And he opened a show and he became famous for this. But he wanted to take it another step. He wanted to become a famous celebrity. So he started to paint celebrities. Some people have seen this print or a version of this print before. Now, this is Marilyn Monroe. She was a very famous actress and basically a sex icon right before this era. Or right during this era, I should say. And so what you're actually looking at, how he created this, you can see that this is printed over and over again. He actually used a screen printing process. This process is the same process as your t-shirts that you get. You have a screen. It actually has this film over top of it that's light sensitive. You expose your design with light to the film. Certain parts of the film harden, and then you can wash away your actual design. So you have a screen with holes basically where your design is. And you can take ink and a squeegee and slide it over that screen, and the ink goes through the screen onto your either paper or your t-shirt. And so what you're actually looking at here is they had about 5 screens. They had a screen for the background. They had a screen for the hair. They had a screen for the eyelids, a screen for the lips, a screen for the skin, and a screen for the black. And that's all they had. And so what you could do is have this screen and create many different color options, such as here. They're just using the screens over and over again and applying different colors with those screens. With Marilyn Monroe, you'll see many of those. Here's a crazy thing about Marilyn Monroe. She was very famous during the day, but there was a lot of famous actresses during that day. With Andy Warhol, him doing a screen print of her, it almost solidified her in history and propelled her throughout history. We know her because of Andy Warhol's paintings. Yes, she was famous back in the day and everything that she did, but a lot of it has to do with Andy Warhol doing a screen printing or multiple screen printings of her and her becoming an icon because of this art. He did many other famous artists, such as Here is Muhammad Ali. Tons of people wanted to be with him. Now, his studio. He actually started to mass produce his art. Like he said, he wanted art to reflect what's going on in the world. So he would actually hire other people to make his screen printings. He would design it, but other people would make it for him. He wanted to turn it into a factory. And that's actually what he called his studio. He called his studio the factory. And I want you to write that down for the most important information. He called his studio the factory. He called his studio the factory. That's an important thing that you want to know. And so celebrities would show up there. They would have parties while he would be creating art. He had crazy things going on. There was a lot of people doing drugs at this time. Not just light drugs, but very heavy drugs, such as LSD, acid, shrooms, cocaine. A lot of crazy stuff going on. And it got to this point, too, in history where there was another invention, the handheld video camera. And these people said, hey, we should use this to create art. And so their theory was this. If someone goes like this, no one in the history of the world has actually done that exactly to a T like that. And no one has actually captured that on video. So you're going to do these things, and I'm going to videotape them, and I'm going to capture this happening. And that's what they called it, these happenings. And we're going to say that that's art. So they would have anywhere from someone changing a tire, to someone combing their hair, to someone eating a cheeseburger. And they would videotape it, and they would call it happenings. And they would all be on drugs, but they would call this art. I got so crazy enough that one guy actually jumped off. He was high on LSD and acid. He jumped out the 5th story floor window high on acid. He actually did survive. But when Andy Warhol found this out, he was on a different floor, he said, well, why didn't he tell me he was jumping out this 5th story floor? I wanted to film it and create a happening out of it. And so crazy stuff happened there. Here is actually his self-portrait. He actually always wore a white wig during this time period because he was on drugs and starting to lose his hair. He had this kind of crazy persona with white hair, and he would wear sunglasses. Yes, he does look a little sickly, but he was actually pretty strong. He actually did 100 push-ups every morning to stay in shape. And he did political figures. Michael Jackson, obviously. But he solidified a lot of people in the history of the world, and I made them an icon, a pop icon, during that time period. His name? Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol. His style is pop art. So Andy Warhol, pop art. I would actually like you to write down in the most important information that pop art means popular culture. That pop art means popular culture. And so when we say pop art, it stands for popular culture, what's going on in culture at that time. And that's what he wanted pop art to be. So, how will we remember this? Here is the image I'm going to show you. All these soup cans. Oh wait, I should say this before I tell you how to remember this. He actually created so many bad connections, and people started doing all these drugs that they started to lose their job and hate Andy Warhol. There was so much so that this woman, she lost everything. She just decided to create this organization called SCUM, which stood for Society for Cutting Up Men. So Society for Cutting Up Men, you heard that correctly, SCUM. And she decided one day that Andy Warhol shouldn't live. So she got a gun, went to his studio, got out of the elevator, and shot Andy Warhol and another person in his studio. And then her gun jammed because there was the art director there that she was going to shoot as well. And the art director said, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And the elevator door opened, and the art director said, "Just get into the elevator and just leave." And she did. She fled. Andy Warhol didn't die from that. He actually slowly recovered, but he was never the same. They actually did catch her too. She served, weirdly, only 3 years for attempted murder for that. Yeah, I know. Only 3 years for attempted murder. But he was never the same. He actually had to wear a corset for the rest of his life, and he had some health problems. It actually pushed him into very much a faith and believing in God. And then he had appendix problems, and he realized that he had to have surgery for that. And he knew if he went into the hospital for it, that he probably wasn't going to come out of the hospital alive. And that was correct. He went in for surgery and never came out, and he died. So, very famous artist, but we're not sure if he enjoyed the celebrity status or not. Here's the image I'm going to show you. All these soup cans. How I like to remember it. If you had all these soup cans in your house, what might be going on in the world? There might be a war going on. And so I like to think of it as all these soup cans are my war haul from school or from the grocery store. So this is my war haul from the grocery store, or Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol. Now, the last little piece that I would like to show you, Andy Warhol stuff shows up a ton in pop culture, even still to this day. There is a movie called Men in Black 3 that I think some of you guys have probably seen. In Men in Black 3, there are these two individuals, the Men in Black, and they're discussing a new tip that this person is going to be at the factory. And one of the guys says, there are tons of factories in the city. How are we even going to find him? And the other guy goes, no, it's not a factory. It's the factory. And so they show up at Andy Warhol's studio. And here is the clip.
Excuse me, Mr. Warhol, can we have a minute? Now's not a good time. This is a BM. Just a few questions. Why don't you come back next week after the happening has happened? I'm sorry, Mr. Warhol. You like talking real slow. We got important stuff to do. And I got a planet to say. You're distressing. Everything about you upsets me. Organic, are you trying to blow my cover? Agent W, your cover is safe. Whoa, Andy Warhol is one of us? Safe. Yeah, you're mine. I'm sort of ideas of penning soup cans and bananas, for Christ's sakes. Actually, Mr. Warhol, I gotta tell you, I really love your work. Oh, thank you. Who's the dumbass? Whoa. Hey, how about a little professional courtesy here? Agents, you know, I don't have no problem pimp slapping the shiznit out of Andy Warhol.